There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, neither do I.
1, 2, 3, set, go!
Hello and welcome to episode 33 of the Power Chord Hour podcast. As always, I'm your host, Anthony Merchant, here welcoming you to another episode of the show, and thank you so much for checking it out. I am sitting here late night in the WRFA studios recording this, coming out Monday, and this is Sunday night here, about 11:30, so probably won't get this out right at midnight, probably a little later after that, working into Sunday night, into Monday morning. But, wanted to make sure we got to this. Wanted to do the August rundown. We are at yet the end of another month, truly insane. And kind of that transition from like summer to fall, depending where you're at. I don't know what the weather's like, but where I'm at, I think it's going to be like September 1st is going to hit, and it's just going to be fall weather right away. Like it's freezing. Like right now I'm in the studio in a long sleeve, and I'm pretty sure I would be comfortable in a crew neck. I don't even think I'd be sweating in here. It is getting so much colder out. And I was thinking about it too. It's funny because like I remember back in like April, like March and April, I'd say, like in the beginning of this, I loved going for walks at night, and I guess that's really not new to the pandemic. I always have, but I was just laughing at it because like during like March and April, like at night, it would be like 40 degrees outside. But like at that time, just because it's so cold in Western New York to begin with, at that time, they didn't even care. Like I'd just throw on a jacket and I'd be like, oh, that's fine. Like, and I'd go walk for like an hour and a half, like just all around at night. Like I love doing that. But now, like as summer's here, I like going for night walks. But the second that it like drops to like 60 degrees at night, I'm like, no, it's too cold. And then it just feels weird. Like I don't mind throwing on a jacket going for a walk. I think it like, like in like the winter time, but by the time it's summer, like there's just something about it where I'm like, if I got to put like a hoodie on at night to go for a walk, I'm like, nah, screw it. It's too cold. So, it's definitely changing here right now. But I also love the fall. So I'm like this weather, like as it gets colder, like right now it's weird because it's still August, but in a week or two here, I'll be like, no, this is what it's supposed to feel like. And then it will be, it'll be time to change the old, the playlist again too. It's, I talk about it on here, but like there's just certain soundtracks for certain times. You have those records or those songs that during summer I feel like you listen to a lot, and then you can get even more specific. There's the ones you're listening to, in the daytime when you're like driving around with the windows down, and then there's like, a whole nother one that you're listening to, like, if you're going for a ride at night, like all that different stuff. I was, like a week or two ago now, I was out in a cabin for about a week, and I remember for a few nights there, I'd stay up really, really late and just, probably be the last one awake. And just laying out like under the stars, just like with my, like with my hoodie under my head, just laying in the dirt and just looking straight up at like the stars. And there's just, that's another one where it's like, there's just perfect music to set that time, to like set that mood. And it's like, it's funny because not just anything will do, it's not a time like I won't just throw something on shuffle. Like I won't put my phone on and throw it on shuffle because at like 3 a.m. just looking at the stars, like there's certain things that I don't want to listen to that just won't, like fit the mood. But, then there's like just certain songs and certain records and stuff that you're just like, oh my God, like it's just made for that, and like I hate to beat a dead horse. I mean, I feel like this record comes up every time I talk about, things like this, but like Jimmy Eat World's Clarity, like that's one where it's like that record at like 3 a.m. under the stars is like perfect. But that one also works a lot of other places too. It's funny, like that one's kind of a good fall record as well. Though I don't know that that's the best Jimmy Eat World fall record either. I Bleed American's a pretty good fall record, and it's funny. Surviving is, I think, probably going to be one, at least for me, but it might also be from association because I remember listening to that record a lot last fall. And, it's kind of something that I think I already associate with fall because of that, because whenever I listen to it, it's already transported me back like a year. So I'm like, I think that one for me personally, and it may totally be just because that's when I would, started really listening to it, but I'm like, that's a pretty good fall record. Jimmy Eat World's great at that though. I mean, they basically have a record for like all your moods and like, all different times of day and seasons and whatnot. But yeah, it's kind of that time right now where that stuff's kind of shifting. And, like right now, like during the summer, like this year, I think a huge summer record for me was New Found Glory's new record, perfect summer album. And then it's like, as we go here into like September, if I listen to New Found Glory, then I'll probably start listening to like Catalyst. Like Catalyst is another one where I'm like, that one to me is a good fall record. Coming Home, I would say is a good fall record, but I don't listen to that one a ton, but I would still put it in that category. Absolutely. I would still say that, it fits in there on one of those, like I love in the fall going for rides, it's like the leaves are changing and, that kind of stuff. And that's a good record, I feel like, for that. But as that stuff changes, as the seasons change here, so do my playlists. And, what is on your fall playlist? Hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. But like, what are you listening to in the fall? Like, what are your, once again, songs or records, because sometimes it's not even full records from bands. It's like there's just certain songs, and then I mean, I guess too, as we go into fall, there's like obvious ones, like the Misfits, as we're going like closer and closer to Halloween. It's like you really can never go wrong with the Misfits. Like it's funny because I mean they work like any time of the year, but it's like they just work so much better in like September and October. Because like in the middle of July, like I'll still listen to them, but like some of those songs are like, yeah, it does. Some of them do kind of feel like out of place. You're like, oh, like this. More the ones where they're talking about Halloween, I guess. There's other ones where like in my opinion, like Where Eagles Dare, that's actually a good like summer song. That's one you can blast like going down the road, on a hot summer day. That's kind of actually funny enough, like a good example of a Misfits like summer song. Not one that you would really think. Not a band you really associate with summer, but I guess there's like one or two in there. But overall, definitely a really good fall band, But yeah, let me know what you're going to be listening to coming up here because, I mean, hell, you may be listening to this and it is September. I mean, it's coming faster and faster. It's just such an odd year. But I think one of the weirdest things to me is how fast it's went by. Because I would have thought that this year was going to drag on. Like, I really did. Like, if you would have asked me, it's like, oh, my God, it's going to be, like, painfully slow. But to be honest, I'm like, I can't believe we're already going into September. Like, it's just nuts, And at the same time, it also feels like, the beginning of the year is such a, like, far distant memory. Like, those first couple months when things were still, everything was open and things were still normal, like, that all feels like, a lifetime ago, even though, in actuality, it was like 5 or 6 months, but it feels so much longer than that. And, but still, with that said, once again, it's like, I can't believe we're going into September, but it's also like one of those things where it's like, no matter what goes on, it's like time does not stop. Even though kind of society and everything else is kind of stopped, time just keeps on going. And yeah, that's where we are now. And, it's just absolutely crazy. Like I saw the other day too, and I hadn't really kept tabs on it, to be honest. In a way, I wasn't even sure if it was going to happen. I think I might have been talking about it. I don't know if it was on the podcast or the radio show a week or two ago. I think I was talking about Archers of Loaf maybe because they had a Record Store Day release. But what I was mentioning was like, I don't know if Record Store Day had even happened or not. And it was like 2 days ago, apparently, it happened. It would have been last Saturday. So it would have been, I believe, like August 29th, if I'm not mistaken. And like I didn't even realize it was like still going on. Like I had no clue. It was just so weird, like, and I don't know. I'm conflicted on it. Like I was once a pretty big Record Store Day guy, and I used to be a pretty good a pretty big vinyl collector. I really don't anymore. I mean, I'll still buy records, but I'm just not. There a very long time ago. I'd like all the different variants and stuff like that. And then I kind of slowed down doing that, and I wasn't, I'd buy like one variant and stuff, and I wasn't as much of the collector, because there was a time where I really got a kick out of that. Like, because really, if you are a collector, vinyl really is pretty fun. Like, now it's kind of been oversaturated, but it's like, it was fun there for a while when it's like, not only are you getting like an album that you love, but it's like, it's limited to like 300 or like 200 and stuff. Like, that's pretty rare. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a collector of something, and depending the size of the band, it's like, that's pretty damn rare when, like, they put out like variants of like, say, 100. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a record, it doesn't matter if that was a t-shirt, like it could be anything, a figure, like any kind of merchandise. Like, if you're a collector, it's like, that's pretty damn cool. But so at one point I was really into Record Store Day. I mean, there were a couple years there where I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I spent a couple $100. I dropped some serious money. I would say, if memory serves me well, probably 2013 and like 2015 were like the 2 years where I spent a couple $100. Like, 300 maybe too much, but I would say 200 isn't enough. It's like, I don't know, maybe I may have spent like 250, and not like now I would never do that. Like, I would be sick to my stomach to even pay that, which even then I was like, yeah, I don't know that I should be spending this, but what it is what it is. It was Record Store Day. Funny enough, though, here's the other thing, is I haven't flipped, and I've always talked about this. Like, I'm not a record flipper in that sense. I have a big collection, and I have sold like some of my collection off on eBay, at times. But I've never done that with intentions. You know what I mean? I never buy a record with intentions of, I'm going to sell this shit for money. But what I will say is, I've sold not even all my records, but a handful of records that I bought during those Record Store Days, and they have since paid back what I spent on those. I gotta say, like, for as many records as I bought during those times, I had a couple that were like worth maybe 100 here, 100 there, where like, you sell like 3 of them, and all of a sudden it's like, well, that like just reimbursed me for all of Record Store Day 2013, which not a I guess not a bad thing overall, because there was a time where I'd like look at what I spent on records. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, that's insane. Like, I got to stop doing that. So, like, in a way, then you don't feel so bad when years later, I sell a couple of these records for like, quite a bit more than I paid for them. And you're like, well, I mean, I guess it wasn't all, stupid. Like, I guess I did make some money back. Plus, I still have, most of my collection. But anyway, like with Record Store Day, I used to really have fun doing it, but it's like, I don't know. I'm conflicted with this year. I'm like, should they have even done it? Like, I mean, I guess I get it. Like, there were already releases being put out earlier this year for it. There was things announced. But my whole thing with it is just, it seems like the fanfare and like the whole kind of fun thing around it just wasn't there this year. And understandably, you know what I mean? Like, totally understandably. But it's like, like I saw some people posting about it and it went out, and that's great. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, listen, it gets people out to record stores. That's awesome. That's always been the objective of it. And I think that's great. And including right now, more than ever, there's a lot of record stores that could use that support. So, I mean, I think it is still a great way of getting people out there. But what I'm saying more of is, normally there's years where like it's insane. Like, you go through your feed and, just everyone's posting about the shit they got, what they're looking for, and that used to be fun too. It's like, I remember, going on like Twitter and like hitting up friends and stuff. We'd be like, who, like, what are you looking for? Well, what are you looking for? And we'd go look, for each other for stuff. And, you'd be like, oh, hey, like, like I'm in, like I do a lot of my shopping up in Buffalo. Like we'd, like here in Jamestown, I'd go to Goodland Records, or not Goodland Records. I believe it was, goddamn, I'm blanking on the name right now. Goodland Records is a great record label ran by Johnny Phillip, who was in Limbeck and the Benjamins, and a bunch of other, played with Tommy Stinson, a bunch of other bands, and just great guy. But Good City Records. I want to say, God damn, I loved it too. And I'm drawing a blank. I believe it was Good City Records at that point. They had like two different names or two different locations. We did have a nice little record store here in Jamestown, which is awesome because it was the only record store we had. But like in a cool little, almost what I would say was like a converted old living room. But a great record store, and I'd go there and actually had a really nice selection for being a small record store in a smaller city here. Really solid selection, and I started a few of my years there, but would end up in Buffalo, go drive up to Buffalo and hit up a bunch of different record stores while I was up there. That would always be fun, but do stuff like that. So I'd hit people up on like, Twitter and stuff. I'm like, hey man, like I'm going to be in Buffalo. Like what releases are you looking for? And I'd have like a buddy in St. Louis and he'd be like, I'm going here and here. Like, what are you looking for? And, it'd just be a lot of fun. And you'd see a lot of people like, posting pictures of what they got and like just all that different stuff. And you really didn't see it this year. I saw a handful of posts. I saw a few people who went out and got some stuff. And, it's just not the year. Like, I don't know. Like once again, it's like, I guess things were probably already pressed. So it's like, I get it. The stuff was already paid for, was probably already put out. So it's like, you got to put it out. But it's just like, it's kind of a bummer because you just look at it and you go like, it's just not really getting the attention or anything this year. You know what I mean? It's almost like, I don't know. Part of me still though, like, I don't know. Maybe you should have just skipped it, or I believe they postponed it, because it's normally not in August. I don't think it's ever been in August. It's normally in like March or April. And I think maybe they should have just skipped it. Or the other thing too is they always do like that like smaller record store day for like Black Friday. It's never as big as the one earlier in the year, but they do that. And I'm almost like wondering if they should have just not done the one in August and just said, screw it, we'll just do one, for Black Friday in November. Because, I'm sure this stuff is still going to be the same. Like, it's not going to be any less weird. But I just think, it buys you a little more time. And then I guess that's a little more normal, too. You do give people a little more normalcy where it's like, oh, yeah, like record store day, like Black Friday, you associate with it. Where for me, I swear, like, and I'm normally someone, I've participated different years. Like I said, dropped hundreds of dollars in the past. Like, I follow what Record Store Day is doing, and I had no fucking clue that, it was still going on and that it was going on, like on Saturday. I was just like, I don't know, like maybe I'm the one out of the loop, but just from what I could tell, it just, it kind of had did not have a boom this year, more kind of a little pitter patter. That was not heard very, very far, if you will. But I don't know. Maybe, and I have to look too. I believe there were a few releases like earlier this year that looked cool. Like I said, that Archers of the Loaf one. There was the Replacements. They put that Incarcerated that came out. I believe actually the entire concert, which was just finally released last year with that Dead Man's Pop box set, which such a great box set. But I believe they did just put that out on vinyl for Record Store Day, which that would be cool to have. That would definitely be cool to have. The Replacements are one of, like I was mentioning, I used to collect a lot of records, and I really don't anymore, but there are a few bands where I'll still collect things and like want, like I kind of want like every, like every variant, whether it's like, I want it on CD and vinyl and all that stuff. And the Replacements are one of those, anything that they put out, I'll just like self-admittedly, it's like if you throw the Replacements name on it, I'll probably buy it. And thankfully they don't abuse that too much though. Like that's a band whose legacy I think has been handled pretty well. Like they put out, like they do the box sets and stuff, like the Pleased to Meet Me box set, which is coming out here in September, which I'm insanely stoked for. That's one of my favorite records of all time. My favorite record of the 80s. My favorite Replacements record, so I'm pretty excited for that box set coming out. But that's the thing. I think they've always been pretty good with that. Like when they've re-released records from the Replacements and done like reissues and stuff, they've normally added bonus material and outtakes and rare stuff. It's normally not just, hey, we quote unquote remastered this record so you can buy it for the 20th time. Like they don't tend to do that, which I like very much. Same with like merch. They don't shit out just different merch constantly and stuff. Really, they have the opposite problem where they don't put out enough merch and you end up buying like I own a few official replacement shirts, but honestly, I definitely own more bootleg replacement shirts than I do officially licensed ones, which has nothing to do with like because I don't want to give, Paul Westerberg my money. It's that they just don't really make them. They made those shirts for reunion shows like 5 or 6 years ago, but it's like those, like I just think they finally put some of those back online, but like they were for sale and then they weren't anymore. And I think they just might have found some more. I know when I saw Tommy Stinson last year, he had a box of random shit from like the Replacements reunion tour that he was selling. And I definitely bought a shirt that was like, I don't know if it was the tag was wrong. I don't know what it was, but that shit was definitely not the size it said. It seemed like it was 3 sizes too small. But I also had to keep it just because, I mean, once again, I when you collect everything that says the Replacements on it, even the damn shirt doesn't fit, you're like, whatever, it'll sit in the closet. But they don't abuse that too much. You know what I mean? Like, they're not one of those bands that, like, we're just going to keep putting out, T-shirts and all that. Because some bands do. Some bands become, let's just be honest, the merchandise kind of overshadows the legacy of, like, the music. There's, and some bands aren't, like I mentioned earlier, like the Misfits. That's a band who I feel like don't get me wrong, I mean, there are tons of people who probably would know the Crimson Skull the logo before they even could name a Misfits song. But with that said, the Misfits are still huge. You know what I mean? Like they reunite and play stadiums and shit. And it's like they're ones where I feel like it's pretty well balanced. But I mean, there are definitely bands out there that released a handful of records maybe and have now survived longer off like merch of said records and stuff than actually like putting out more music and shit. Some bands definitely do that. So thankfully the Replacements are not like that. Maybe it's just out of laziness, but either way, I'm kind of happy that what comes out is actually pretty high quality stuff, because there are some bands which, it's like the legacy of it, which, isn't even the band's fault a lot of times. It more has to do with the labels. And, Rhino has done a great job with the reissues. Bob Mayer, who did Trouble Boys, writing a bunch of liner notes and putting all this stuff together. Just really good stuff. And like I said, I'm really excited for that Pleased to Meet Me box set. I still got to go grab it. There's some really cool pre-orders up that have a bunch, like a reprint of the placemats. If you've ever seen them, they, everyone calls their Replacements the mats, and they made promotional placemats for Pleased to Meet Me back in the 80s. Like those, like you go to like a diner and they give you like one of those paper placemats, like one of those. Like it's awesome. And I think they have like tote bags, maybe a T-shirt and stuff. They have different pre-orders. I think a cassette maybe of some live stuff or something. I believe it's a cassette. They did that with a Dead Man's Pop as well. They did like some outtakes and stuff on a cassette that you had to get, which I got. Shout out Electric Fetus in Minneapolis. I ended up getting to score one. But that too, Rhino's been really good with like giving you goodies too. Like when you pre-order that stuff or you get it in like indie record stores, like they always have really good goodies. Like they had like the paper cutout figures of the Replacements a few years ago for the first sale live at Maxwell's album, and some really cool like posters for the LP reissues like 5 or 6 years ago, like different stuff like that. It's funny too because I try to hunt that stuff down just because I'm such a huge Replacements fan. And you go to record stores and like sometimes they'd have it, some wouldn't. Like so, like I forget which one I bought, but I bought one of those. I bought the Twin Tone box set that they put out. They did the Twin Tone years and then they did the Sire years. And I got the first 4 releases from Twin Tone in a vinyl box set, and where I bought it had none of the extra shit with it. Like, they had like vinyl slip mats, they had like some posters, some stickers, some pins, but the place I bought it didn't. So after that, I wanted that stuff. So anytime I'd go to record stores, I'd just try to sweet talk, like the employees, which it's funny, like sometimes you go in and like some of them don't give a shit. Like if you buy something, they'll give you those promos. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times they do that where like it doesn't even matter. Like they don't always. I worked in a record store for like a hot minute a few years ago, and it's kind of, if the person even remembers, like we just keep all the promo shit like underneath the cash register, and you're just supposed to remember where like if a dude comes up and buys like a Jeff Tweedy CD, there's like poster, like they get like a fucking Jeff Tweedy poster, and you just got to kind of remember that, and it's like half the time you forget. So unless the person asks too, because like half the people know they're supposed to get something and the other half don't care, don't know. So, a lot of times it's hit or miss, but I'd go in there and you kind of try to sweet talk them. And sometimes you'd get someone who's really cool and gives you that shit. And then others like, nah, man, you got to buy it. But, it was funny because I'd go all these different places, and like sometimes like I remember one place, I think it was like Chicago, like I bought like a Husker Du pin and a Big Star pin. Like I spent all of $2 at this place, and I asked the woman if I could have one of the replacements posters that they put out. I think that one was for the Sire years. That was for the second box set they did. And she gave me like 2 or 3 of them. She's like, yeah, totally. And like I spent like $2 there, like, and she just gave me like 2 or 3 of those posters, which were quite rare, which was awesome. And then I went to another one and I spent like $70 on stuff and bought no replacements. You know what though? I did buy Paul Westerberg's 14 songs on vinyl, so that's kind of the connection there. But I didn't buy the box set, and they refused. Like they had a bunch of the promos that I saw behind the desk, and they're like, nah, like you got to buy that box set. But yeah, Rhino's pretty solid with those extra goodies you get. For a lot of other bands too, but for the replacements, they put out stuff that I'm like, that's really good. That's actually really thought out and stuff. And like I said with Bob Mayer too, knowing that he's legitimately a huge Replacements fan, like, it's great that he's out there archiving stuff, researching things, writing the liner notes. Like there's quality behind it. There's absolutely a quality that you don't always get. I mean, how many albums have just been once again remastered and maybe even remastered, if that, and just kind of thrown out there for like $15. It's like, here, go buy this album again. It's like there's nothing nothing added to it. There's no real reason to buy it, but not with these. They do a really good job, so I'm pretty stoked for that. Pleased to Meet Me box set coming out here in a couple weeks. I do got to pre-order that, get them goodies there. But yeah, I'm pretty excited for that. I was so stoked with last week's guest, Bill McShane of Ultimate Fake Book, when I was talking to him and he mentioned the replacements as well as Super Drag. It was like I mean, I was already a fan of the new record, and like I knew he liked those bands because I mean, for one, he name dropped Super Drag on the new record, which just I already liked the record, but once I heard him name drop Super Drag and After Hours at Moline's, I'm like, oh my god, like this fucking rules. But it was great talking about the replacements. We talked about it a little more too when the mics were off afterwards. There's just certain bands where like if I know you're a fan, it's like we just got to get into it. Like it doesn't matter when I'm interviewing you about, like, if the replacements get brought up, like we got to have that discussion. They're just they're my favorite band. That's actually another good fall band. I would definitely say I associate them with the fall. And even outside of that, I mean, really, actually, if you don't know the replacements, you don't listen, you don't know that much about them, you got to fucking change that. The greatest band of all time. Paul Westerberg is God, and you can quote me on that. But and it's true, because I used to have a pair of Vans that I wrote that on the side of on both of them. Westerberg is God. So it has to be true. It was written on my slip-ons. But yeah, if you've never really checked them out, there's not a better time than the fall to start listening to them. And outside of just the replacements, I mean, like their later stuff, like Paul Westerberg's first couple solo records are really good fall stuff, like 14 songs, and eventually, like those I would say are both really good. And but the one that really takes cake, I think, is Bash and Pop's Friday Night is Killing Me. Number one, it's the greatest post replacements release, in my opinion. That's Tommy Stinson's post Mats band. But Friday Night is Killing Me is like the best one. And number two, one of the best like fall records. That title track, Start With That. I mean, that right there is a great fall song. But that whole record, I think, because part of it too is there's kind of a melancholy, kind of melancholic vibe over, I feel like, a lot of the songs. It just really works for the fall. That just really kind of works, like I was talking about, that like driving around with the leaves changing. And also something like too, like around here, like like I'm in Western New York, but as you kind of go more upstate too, there's just certain places you drive through where I go, like you just drive through the small towns, you watch the leaves change and shit, and I'm just like, it's just a great soundtrack to it. Just a solid record. I mean, the replacements as a whole, including though like Let It Be and Tim, and I would probably say Don't Tell a Soul are like the three best Mats records for like the fall. I think there's a certain vibe on there, and some kind of the more like faster shit I'd say is more summertime. Like Sorry Ma, to me, that's more of like a summertime record. Whereas when the fall hits, I'm throwing on Tim, I'm throwing on Let It Be, Don't Tell a Soul for sure, and All Shook Down actually too. All Shook Down I think is also a pretty good fall record. Kind of that more mid-tempo. You know what I mean? It's less of the punk stuff. It's more mid-tempo and some ballads on there, obviously. And some of those definite more like Paul Westerberg singer-songwriter type songs and stuff, but that just works. You know what I mean? I think that just works. Some of the best fall stuff. So, my favorite band. I mean, so I may be a little biased at it, but truthfully or honestly, if you're listening to this and you don't really listen to the Replacements, or you've never listened to them, go change that shit. They're a great fall band. Not a better time to start listening to them. And, I mean, they're the greatest band of all time. They just are. All your favorite bands have ripped them off. And don't get me wrong, the Replacements ripped people off before them, but the Replacements did it best. And also, I don't know, the way they handled it and everything they did, too. I mean, it's just, they're one of the most interesting bands. They just are. Like, you can talk about them forever. There's just so much, and just the funniest. Sometimes I'll just think about them and just laugh at the shit that they did. Like, just things like shaving off their eyebrows and going on TV and just like, and then drawing eyebrows back on. Like things like that are just like, what, like, why? Like, why did they do that? Like, they just doing shit to shoot themselves in the foot, or I mean, the whole infamous Saturday Night Live, performance. And just the way that they didn't care. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's part of the appeal and the allure of them, is just the fact that they didn't really seem to care. And it's just funny how they took the piss out of everything. Like, they were writing the greatest music of the time. Like, I mean, including as college rock goes, they're the greatest college rock band. REM is fine and dandy. And I mean, they've sold ungodly amounts of records. Don't get me wrong. Credit where credit's due. But the Replacements there take the cake, in my opinion, is the best like college rock band of the 80s. And, I mean, basically are the reason all those all the 90s alternative bands were all influenced by the Replacements. You know what I mean? Like, all of that shit came from, all of them were listening to the Mats and trying to be Paul Westerberg. The mainstream may not have seen that or known who Paul Westerberg was, but a lot of those people that they loved in the 90s were basically like light versions of Westerberg, like Westerberg light, and not the real thing, something close, but not the real thing. But yeah, love the Replacements. Love talking to Bill last week about them for a minute. And before that interview started too, I gotta say, and the interview went really, really well. I love talking to him. Bill's a great guy. Just everything we talked about was fun. I loved getting into the music industry with him too. But beforehand, the audio, whatever that thing is, that connector in iPhones now, since it's not just a regular like auxiliary jack or headphone jack, that stupid fucking adapter that you need now is like the bane of my existence. I cannot tell you people, I've had literally I won't say a bunch of interviews, but for one, there was one interview that all fell through, and it never got rescheduled because I went to record and I didn't have that goddamn adapter, and I also didn't have a vehicle at the time, and was 10 minutes before we were supposed to do the interview, and just had no way of hooking up my stupid phone to the mixing board. And it was just like, I hate that thing. And that was just that time. I've had some other scares where, including the beginning when because I just finally got one of these. I tried to fight it, but this is my first iPhone with that stupid adapter in it, and I got it back in like February, I think. And the first couple interviews I did, I would forget all about that. Like, I would have everything with me. I'd be driving down to the studio, and thankfully it was sitting in my car, because I had it hooked up to listen to music. But I'd be in the studio, I'm all set, I'm getting ready to have the guest on, and all of a sudden I go, I can't hook up my fucking phone. And I'd go, it's that stupid adapter. I'd have to rush down, go grab it. I'd forget about it all the time. But this time, anyways, when I was going to talk to Bill McShane last week, I had that, so that was no issue. But I had bought in one for like $7 at a gas station, and I thought nothing of it, like whatever. Now, I don't know if all of them do this. Maybe I just have a shitty one. Who knows? But I go to use it, and it will play music through the adapter, but it will not take. You cannot listen to the phone calls. It will not play the phone calls through. So I'm trying to use this thing so I can record my conversation with Bill through my iPhone to then go through the mixing board and into Adobe Audition, and the fucking thing will not work. It will play music, but it will not play the phone call. So, I'm sitting here running around trying to rush. That was the only one I had. I didn't know where the official Apple adapter that I had was. I only had this shitty gas station one. And I guess this is what you get for buying a $7 adapter. I guess that's what it is. But thankfully here at WRFA, we do have the old landline. But I had not used it since, I want to say 2017 may have been the last time. Probably 3 years ago. I did only the first couple interviews that we did on here, I did through the landline, and I think other people use it. I'm not saying that other people don't use the landline here, but I went to go use it. Not everything was hooked up. It wasn't working at first, and thankfully I got everything working, and I'm just like, fuck, I hope this works, because I had already had to reschedule with Bill and stuff, and I always feel bad with technical difficulties. When you tell someone you're going to call it 3 o'clock and it's 3:15 because you can't, just stupid things start happening. Just the dumbest little things happen that just get in the way that you can't do it. And it's I'm like, I have to make this work. And thankfully we did. And at first, too, we were having some weird stuff. Bill ended up, you know what, though? It was all good because he was having technical difficulties as well. Because once I finally got the landline to work, I started calling him, and his phone was going straight to voicemail. And at first, I'm almost like, I don't know, is he sending me to voicemail? And then he hit me up on Facebook Messenger, and he's like, hey, are you trying to call me? I keep getting missed calls, but it's not going through. So thankfully that worked too. I'm telling you people, at first maybe that interview was not meant to happen. We had to fight through it all, but thankfully we did. And I didn't think it sounded too bad through the landline. It obviously sounds like you're listening to someone through the other side of the phone, but I thought he came in pretty clear and everything. And I was just so happy because, like I said, I had not used that thing in 3 years, and I'm like, I just hope this works. And thankfully it did. And yeah, I thought that was a great interview with him. I really enjoyed talking to him. And there was actually a website, a really cool music website the other day, That's Good Enough for Me, they're called. You should go check them out. But they do a little podcast rundown of podcasts every week, and they did a little write-up about that episode and about me and Bill talking, which I thought was awesome. They tagged us the other day on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, cool, what's this? And I looked, and yeah, they did a little, and we're up there with some great company, too. This Was the Scene, really great podcast. Krista Makes of Less Than Jake, his new podcast was on there. Bunch of other ones too, bunch of really, really good ones. So shout out to them for posting that and getting the, spreading the word out there. And yeah, if you've not checked it out yet, I mean, it's in the podcast feed. And, I've also said the Preserving Machine, the new Ultimate Fakebook record, one of my favorites of the year. So it was really fun to talk to him and, get to hear about the record and stuff. I love doing that on the show. When you love a record and it's one of your favorites of the year, to get to talk to the person who wrote it and, just ask questions and shit, like as a fan, not as someone who's like, oh, I have to, I need a guest and I have to write questions and stuff, and I'm just doing this because I need someone. It's not that at all. It's, I legitimately love this guy's music and I love this new record and I want to talk to him as a fan about, how the album was made, this is the first album in years from them, how they got back together and just all that stuff, I'm curious of it. And, thankfully there's a lot of other people out there who are a fan of Ultimate Fakebook and a lot of other people who I've interviewed. And, they're just fans too and want to hear that stuff. It's one of those things where I'm always happy when I hear from people who listen to the show, because there a lot of times you do think you're the only person who gives a shit about some of this stuff, where you're no one else probably really cares about some of these specific questions or weird random factoids about bands and certain songs or records and stuff. But doing the radio show now for 4 years and doing the podcast, I've met and talked to a lot of people who are into the stuff just as much as me, if not more, meeting a lot of people too, or even more hardcore fans of things, where it's really cool because you go from am I the only one who gives a shit to oh no, there's a whole, community of people out there who care about this stuff and care about these bands and the music. So, it also makes it worth doing it. But, yeah, loved doing it. Loved talking about the new Ultimate Fakebook record with Bill. He was really, really good guy. And, Ultimate Fakebook have been around for a really, really long time. But, this new record was the first one of theirs that I really listened to front to back. I'd heard some songs throughout the years. I've known who they were for a long time. And in college too, when I took music theory, they would always pop up in my... I forgot to tell Bill this too. It's just kind of random, but when I took music theory in college, because if you don't know what a fake book is, a fake book is a book of chords and lyrics. What it will be if you know what a guitar tab is, it's not a guitar tab. It's even more simplified, where you'll have the song and it'll have the song's lyrics, and over it will just have the chords. So there's no leads. It doesn't show you specifics. It's just a way to play along. It's just, it lets you know the key. It lets you know where you're at in the song. And then, you're supposed to if you're it lets you play leads over it. It lets you kind of do different shit, but it lets you kind of establish and know where you're at in the song. And just really kind of a simplified, honestly, I look at it kind of more even simplified than tabs. Because I'm you're not even writing out, even if it's power chords, you're not even writing that stuff out. You just very simply, here's the chord that you play over these lyrics, or for this measure. But that's what a fake book is. But when I learned about fake books in a music theory class in college, Ultimate Fake Book would just always pop in my head. I may have heard even one or two songs. I just knew of them. And just anytime we'd talk about fake book, Ultimate Fake Book would just pop up in my head. And they would distract me from learning music theory. So I forgot to tell Bill McShane, but I wanted to thank him. I'm a shittier musician for it, because his band would pop up in my head instead of me paying attention to music theory and maybe becoming a better musician. I was thinking of that band who plays with all my other favorite bands like the Get Up Kids and stuff. But yeah, so that's what a fake book is. I didn't ask him either. I assume that's what it has to do with too. But I've always wondered that, because it's and it's funny now because Facebook exists. And he's yeah, when we started, Facebook didn't exist, but now there are people who, if you're not a musician, or if you don't use a fake book, it's a pretty specific thing, you probably don't know what a fake book is. So there's a lot of people who do just assume it's Facebook. So they do get called Ultimate Facebook quite a bit, which I thought was really funny. But yeah, I had a great time talking to Bill. Got to thank him again for calling in. And just such a good new record and such a great band who, I mean, is really, they're kind of like the Benjamins like that. They do remind me of the Benjamins, which is another band I love and I talk about constantly on here, and I'm a buddy with a few of the dudes from that band. But a band who, like, they listen, like, they have a Replacements influence to them, but they also, like, have a pop punk like sound. You know what I mean? Like that in between where it's like they could play a show with New Found Glory, but they could also go play a show with like the Replacements or Horse, or kind of more like a power pop band or like a college rock band, like that kind of in between. You know what I mean? Because there is an in between that exists, which I love, and you don't find tons of bands who do it, which I don't know why. You think you would find more. But really that in between where it's like, look at, like, we love pop punk and melodic stuff and hooks and catchy shit, but it's like we also listen, and a lot of times those people just listen to what, they go back further than a lot of other people do. Like they love the Descendants and different things like that, but they also love, the bands that influenced the Descendants and the bands that came before them, like that kind of thing that a lot of people don't do. And, I think it comes through loud and clear in their music, and I love it. I love the new record. I can't say enough good things about it. But, I love talking to him. Definitely, I'd probably go ahead and say it was like my favorite episode of the month. Though we did have a couple really fun ones. I know I took that week off for camping, but also the one earlier in the month with Christian Lesperance of Jersey Interchange. That was another great one. I loved talking to him. And, I loved it too because I've through the show, I've talked to a lot of people from like the New Jersey pop punk scene, but including on this one, I heard from a lot of people from that scene back then, and just really great compliments on the episode, who, for the people who listened to it, and just really welcoming and cool people, like not even a lot of people, like all the people I've ever talked to who were a part of that scene, and who were at those shows or who were in those bands, either one, the spectators, the people who booked the shows, the people who are in the bands, whoever it is, they're so nice. They always have nothing but great words about the time there. They tell you all about it. You can hear the excitement in their voice. Like that was such a special scene, and it's so awesome to see it so well documented. Because a lot of those bands were pre-social media and were pre-internet. And now, they're going back years from now, and a lot of these people are older now with families and stuff. But they have this archive of, what they did like 20 years ago, and they're putting it out there. And, for like someone like me who found this stuff, say, like 10 years ago, years after all these bands disbanded and shit, and there's not much info out there, I love it because now there's all this stuff that I get to learn. And there's new bands I get to discover. And, like different stuff like that. And it's just great. But that whole community is just so welcoming. All those people who were part of that scene years ago who now, like are part of the Facebook groups. And I mean, like I mentioned earlier, this was the scene. I mean, it's a whole podcast dedicated to, that scene. And funny enough, even though Ultimate Fake Book aren't from New Jersey, I think they definitely played shows in New Jersey a lot during that time and played with a lot of those bands who were from that scene. And I know they were on, I know Bill was on This Was the Scene not too long ago. And we've had some overlapping guests. And Mike Doyle's a really rad dude, also the bass player of Lane Meyer, another great New Jersey pop punk band. But that whole thing is special to me, and to get to even if in a little way I get to be a part of it by like helping document this stuff is really, really cool, and I'm happy I got to be a part of it. But that was another really fun one this month, and I think those are really the only two guests, because we I did this one and another solo episode talking about my favorite releases so far of the year. But I think our only guests so far this month, or not so far, we're at the end of August now. But Christian Lesperance of Jersey Interchange and Bill McShane of Ultimate Fake Book. Just both great guests, great dudes. I love talking to them, and it's always exciting. I try to get some really good guests on here, And, I always try to, what you want to do is get a few at a time. You know what I mean? Like, because if you want to ask like one person, there's a good chance they don't get back to you. Or even if they do come on, a lot of times things will happen and, you got to reschedule or whatnot. So you want to try to get multiple feelers out there and, get some more in. And that's kind of like what I'm doing right now. I'm kind of getting the next few weeks worth, basically like for September and a little further on too, like get the next wave of like guests ready and, like who I should have on. And it's fun, but it's also frustrating because like you go like, first I try to think of like, okay, like who has new stuff coming out, so we have some stuff to talk about and promote and some, like new stuff spread the word on. You start thinking about that. And then you start hitting people up, and then it's like then it's also a waiting game. Sometimes you hear back, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get yeses, sometimes you get nos, and and then I also like to spread it out. Like I know it's been a little while. We've definitely done episodes on here, which I love doing on here, but doing like the anniversary ones, where I interview people about certain albums from their career. That have celebrated, they're celebrating like a milestone anniversary this year. And like, we haven't done one of those in a while. So it's like, I also try to even that stuff out where I'm like, well, I don't want every interview to be just that. And then it's like, you also don't want just every interview to be about like just one thing, like I don't want every interview just to be about the New Jersey pop punk scene, so you try to spread it out, and try to have a nice even kilter of like, different types of guests and stuff. And, kind of it's spread out more so, so everyone's entertained. Like I said, I don't want a whole month of just album anniversary interviews or a whole month of just, podcasts about the New Jersey pop punk scene, or like something like that. So, it is fun, but, it's also definitely kind of a challenge. And it's just it's just part of doing the show, but, I love doing it. And, if there's anyone that you would like to hear on the show, that's the other thing, always feel free to hit me up and, let me know. And I'll try, obviously there's no guarantee. And the bigger the artist, like I'm probably not, like I would love to have Paul Westerberg on the show, but Paul ain't coming on the show. There's obviously people who you probably can't get, but if there's anyone you want to hear on the show, let me know and I'll try getting them on. I definitely want to get some people on there that people listening to this are fans of, and help spread the word on some good stuff. And I'm very excited to. I've announced it on social media, but the radio show that we do every Friday night, we are extending that now 2 hours a week, which I want to thank 107.9 WRFA for not only letting us do the show now for 4 years, but for letting me extend the show. We still do it 10 o'clock every night, 10 Eastern every Friday night, but now it's going to be 10 to midnight, which I'm very stoked for. And, the last few months, the more interviews I do from doing this podcast, I do much more long form interviews. Some of the earlier ones I was just doing the radio show would just be more, like you would have to cut them, because there's commercials and we only have an hour and stuff. So it's like, it's kind of more regimented. And I would have to kind of watch things where it's like, after so many questions, you're like, okay, now, now we got to take a break and now we have to talk about this, or, we got to cut this and that. And, doing the podcast, I try to do them more now where, I don't edit them really. There's not really, not unless there needs to be. And there's really almost never a time to, unless someone says something stupid, which really never happens with guests. It's more friends that I've had on this show that end up saying something really fucking stupid that you got to cut out. But, like I really don't try to edit, interviews or anything. I just try to keep them, unedited and just basically raw, just because so you just hear literally just straight up the conversation we had. So, with that, I mean, you've heard the interviews on here. I mean, some of them go for like an hour and a half and stuff, and sometimes even longer. And, like with doing that, they've been really cool on WRFA where like, because I don't want to cut it down. Like I don't want to have to make a condensed version. Like if I have to, I will. And I have done that in the past. But, I want to air it as unedited as can be. So, they've been cool enough to let me go for 2 hours, when I need to. I'm like, hey, can we extend the show this week? Like last week we did with Bill McShane. Like that interview went long. So, we did a 2 hour show, which was really fun too, because we got to do the interview with Bill McShane. Then I played some Ultimate Fake Book. And then we spent the last probably like 40 minutes, I'd say, celebrating the life and legacy of Walter Lure, who passed away about 2 weeks ago now, who was the guitarist and also occasionally singer of Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreakers, as well as some other bands. And he also played some lead guitar on a couple Ramones records, and just all around just legend. And the last surviving member of the Heartbreakers, and passed away at 67. Was really, I mean, that's pretty damn young, though. I mean, really, probably the oldest age of one of the Heartbreakers to pass away. I think Billy Rath was like maybe in his 60s. Like I think he was probably like in his 60s when he passed away. But another one who died very young, and he died back in I think he died maybe like 6 or 7 years ago at this point. But just so insanely sad to just think they're all gone, just all four of the Heartbreakers. I mean, Richard Hell, who was in the band originally, I mean, Richard Hell's still alive, but I think he is the only one, maybe a couple guys who later on, some of those later shows that they'd play who, I don't think Billy Wraith played, or I don't know if it's Wraith or Wrath, to be honest, but I think it's Wrath. Great bassist. I just don't know. I don't know. It's one of those ones where I don't know I've ever heard anyone say his last name out loud. So you just never know. But I'm going with Billy Wrath. But hit me up and tell me I'm a fucking poser if I'm messing up his name, which he is another legend. He's some great bass lines on LAMF. But he later on moved away. I forget what country he lived in, but he lived in a whole nother country. So I think some of those Heartbreaker reunion shows that they'd play later on, including in the 90s, some of those final years like Johnny Thunders, I think they would have different people play with them. But I mean, the Heartbreakers lineup that everybody knows, the band that played on LAMF, all of them are gone. It's insane. I mean, all four original Ramones are gone. All four Heartbreakers are gone. It's so crazy how many people from that original era of 77 punk and really before, because I mean, Heartbreakers were the precursor to punk, even though a lot of those guys like Johnny Thunders, and I don't know how Walter Lure felt, but I mean, a lot of those dudes in the band were we're not punk, we're not we're rock and roll, we're a rock and roll band, but either whether they liked it or not, though, they influenced punk. I mean, you can't listen to LAMF and go these guys, same with New York Dolls, it's whether or not they think they were punk or that they were a precursor to it, you can't deny, even if you didn't like what punk was, you influenced them insanely, even to this day, But Walter Lure, that was fun. I played a bunch of Heartbreakers. I played stuff from the Waldos and some of his other stuff, some of the things. He did a great cover of Street Fighting Man with the Ramones, where he did lead vocals on it and stuff too. So I just played a bunch of different stuff from his career. But the radio show, that was fun to do the 2 hours, because it gives you more time to do stuff like that, to be able to interview or to air the entire interview and then play some Ultimate Fake Book, and then still have time to be we're going to play 40 minutes of, Walter Lure's music. So yeah, that was really fun, and I'm very stoked that it's 2 hours a week now. And, with the stuff I play too, I mean, I play all punk and alternative, and a lot of shit that I'm playing is 2 minutes long. So it's you can fit so much music in 2 hours, even with talking, even with me yapping in between songs and whatnot, that's just so much music I can fit on there. I think to celebrate this next episode, I'm just going to play we're going to see how many times I can play the Decline in 2 hours. We're going to see, I think 5 or 6 we should be good for. So I think that will be this next week to celebrate the new 2 hour slot for the Power Chord Hour. We're just going to play the Decline a lot. But I'm very stoked for that. So some cool stuff coming up for the show here in September. But, before we get in, to a brand new month here, I do have the new releases of August here for you. I know I'm just here. That's why these rundowns are fun. It's just kind of a way to talk about what's come out and also just bullshit about music and what I've been doing for the month and stuff. I hope people enjoy this. But I know we're about an hour in now, so I think it is time to get to some new releases. White Reaper put out this really rad cover from Cleaners from Venus. Their song Only a Shadow, they just covered it, and a rad new single you should go check out. Guided by Voices. I mean, Robert Pollard, he writes songs in his sleep. I don't even know what number album this is for Guided by Voices, like record fucking 100, and that's probably not even accurate. This is like album 400 from them, but Mirrored Aztec, gotta go check that out. The Killers, Imploding the Mirage. You know, I've not listened to this record yet, but all I've heard is good stuff, and I'm a casual Killers fan. I actually... Like last year, I went back and listened to Hot Fuss for the first time in like years, and like I think I'm more into it now than I ever was before. And I'm hearing people like kind of like with the Strokes. I'm hearing people compare it to the first two records and also saying it's some of their best stuff. So I mean, I would definitely say go check it out. I still got to go check it out because if it's like that, I'm into that older stuff. I like the last couple albums they've put out, some of the more like dancey stuff and synthy stuff I'm not really into, but there are some solid jams on those first couple records. So if this is anything like that, definitely worth checking out. Our buddy Joey Cobra, a friend of the show who was on last month, and really our first in-studio interview in I don't know how long. He just put out his second EP for the year. It's called Way Too Many Mistakes, and if you did hear our interview, he said he has 3 releases this year. So this is the second of, and we got one more later on in the year coming out. So definitely go check that out. Very cool, and want to also say big congratulations to him and his wife. They did have a child like a week or so ago. Another one on the interview, he announced, or not announced, but you know he did say that you know they're going to be having a child, and they have since had the child. So big congratulations to him and his wife. And very, very cool. He very busy man, you know, has a kid, just released this. Like I said, has a third release on the way. It's kind of like what Guided by Voices. He's kind of the Robert Pollard of pop punk right now. And speaking of some really good pop punk, Slick Shoes just put out another single. It is called Visitors off their upcoming new record that a friend of the show, Steven Kravick, or I get it mixed up, Steve Kravick, and also known as Stephen Bradley, and a really great record that you should go check out he put out last year. But he produced this one, produced some of their other stuff in the 90s, and seems like a match made in heaven. There's some really good stuff coming out on this new record. I got to have those guys on. I'm really liking how this album is shaping out to come out. And The Inevitables, really cool, kind of super group, I would say, that has members. We got Vinny from Less Than Jake. This is his new project. Also has members from Real Big Fish, Bomb the Music Industry, Big D and the Kids Table, Night Bears for a Week, The Interrupters, and Westbound Train. And I mean, so yeah, a huge super group, if you will. But they just put out their first single, Fort Lauderdale. And I believe their Kickstarter's still up, but they were doing a crowdfunding thing. It's a very interesting project that with the music also has like an accompanying like a whole visual aspect where I want to say it's kind of like a comic book that it comes with. It's a very interesting concept. I'm not gonna do it any justice here, but check out The Inevitables, and I believe the Kickstarter is still up to get a better idea of the project. But it's really, really cool. Very interesting. Vinny always does very cool, interesting stuff, and anything he's involved with too, because I believe he wrote the lyrics for this. You know are going to be good. I mean, he wrote with Less Than Jake. I mean, you know, if you don't know, I mean, Vinny was the drummer in Less Than Jake. There, he just left the band like 2 or 3 years ago, and he was like the key songwriter. He wrote the lyrics for most of their stuff, and wrote some of the best. Less Than Jake are underrated with that. Vinny is one of the best lyricists that there are. And easily the best lyricist in ska, like hands down. So you definitely want to go check that out. Deftones got a new one, and I've not checked out the whole thing, but I've checked out a few songs, and I love it. It is Ohms. Really rad album artwork, too. I'm really into it. Anytime they put something out, I'm stoked. And I was never a nu metal guy, and I kind of feel like I missed it, too. I feel like I missed that boat, too, by a couple years. Like I feel like I was just a little young for it. But you know what, though? I don't know if I missed the boat, because when I did hear a lot of it, I never had a phase where I was into like Limp Bizkit or Korn or Linkin Park or anything like that. And whatever, cool if you are, but I definitely had friends who were, but the Deftones are like that exception, and I always hear that, like, I'm far from the only person, but like the Deftones are the exception of like that, like, quote unquote new metal. Like, if you look at the bands that they're kind of associated with, the bands that they've toured with and stuff, like, they're the only band from that kind of scene and genre that I've ever really liked. But that's a huge compliment to them, because they also just transcend genre, I think. And there's a lot of people who you wouldn't think listen to them who listen to them. They're one of the best doing it. So you got to go check out that new record. Blink-182 have a new single out, is called Quarantine. And I don't know, I guess it's worth a listen. It's just a short kind of, it sounds very Bad Religion-y. For sure. I'd say it's worth listening to at least once. I don't know, it's kind of a throwaway track, but once again, it's like, it's Blink-182, so you kind of want to check it out, even though I'm not a huge fan of the Skiba era. You're still curious of things, so I'm sure you're curious of that if you haven't heard it yet. But go listen to it. It's them doing their best version of Bad Religion. Shades Apart, who we're actually going to play something from right now, put out their first new record in years, really decades actually. It is called Eternal Echo. Really good stuff, and we're going to play you some new music right now. We'll kick off that block with Teach Me How to Live. It is some new Shades Apart for you right here on the August Rundown of the Power Chord Hour podcast. Right here on the August Rundown of the Power Chord Hour podcast, that was Jersey Interchange with their Saves the Day cover of Deciding, which we got to premiere on the Power Chord Hour radio show earlier this month when we aired our interview with Christian. And I love Saves the Day, so it was really, really cool to get to premiere that. And they just did such a solid job on that song. Before that was our buddy Joey Cobra with The Road off his new EP, Way Too Many Mistakes. Go grab that off his Bandcamp and go give some support to some local Jamestown music. And opening up that block of music was a new one from Shades Apart from their first album in really decades, called Eternal Echo, and that song was Teach Me How to Live. Before I let you go, we got one more thing here for the August Rundown, and I got a few music news stories here from the month for you. The Bouncing Souls have announced a new record of reimagined versions of some of their classic songs. The album is going to be called Volume 2 and is going to be released on Pure Noise Records here on October 23rd. And the track list includes songs such as Hopeless Romantic, Argyle, Highway Kings, Kids and Heroes, World on Fire, Ghosts on the Boardwalk, and a whole lot more. And they'll be out very soon. That is really cool too. I forget that's not their first release on Pure Noise, but as far as Pure Noise goes, really to see how far that label's come, that is pretty cool that they have the Bouncing Souls on there. I mean, I remember them from I think they started in like 08, 09 maybe. And, just following them, including back in the day, like with a lot of those early bands, like, The Story So Far and Handguns, and like the split they did with Transit and Man Overboard. And just back in the day, and State Champs and Forever Came Calling and all those bands, like, they were really putting out some really good stuff, and they still are, but I mean, they were putting out some really the best like pop punk music that was coming out in the early 2010s, and really plays a huge role, I would say, in modern day pop punk. But just so cool to see them sign bands like the Bouncing Souls, and I've also had bands like Senses Fail and Reggie and the Full Effect, and and like our buddies in Hawthorne Heights, and just like all these really big bands where you're like, wow, like that label has come a really long way, and good for them. And I'm stoked to hear this. I love the Bouncing Souls. It'll be neat to hear these reimagined versions. I don't know. I always have a curiosity with these, like with the reimagined songs and stuff. Sometimes bands do it and it ends up really good, and other times it just doesn't end up, the opposite of that, just does not end up very good. But it's always worth checking out, I think. To me, it's always cool to see what they end up doing and, like what they're changing. Like I know the Menzingers right now are working on their last record, Hello Exile. They're doing like a new version of it where I believe it's going to be, I don't know that they're reimagining the songs as much as they're like reworked acoustically, but I'm really interested in that, and I'm also stoked for that. Anytime a band does something like that, once again, I think it's cool, including like with the Bouncing Souls, where they're not even just, like re-recording like a record. They're like just going through and it's like picking different songs and fan favorites and, kind of breathing new life into them. So I'm excited to hear what they end up doing with it. And another one earlier this month, Tom DeLonge posted on Instagram that he had a spot lasered off of his face. And while it was not a major health scare, nothing to be too worried about, DeLonge had to get this one removed. And he because he did have skin cancer there in the past, kind of in the, I believe it was like 2010, 2011. I remember he did like a little PSA the first time he had it. He did have skin cancer, and thankfully they detected it early, got everything taken care of. But in his post, he just said, like after, it was kind of like a minor spot on his face, but once you've had that, you don't want to mess around with it. So he had to get it lasered off. But, hopefully, everything's good with him and, safe recovery and everything. Like, I don't think it was a major procedure or anything. But, he posted that on there, let people know what was going on. And, good to know that all that was, like, caught early and, that he's in good shape. You look at different musicians from different eras, like we were talking about earlier with Walter Lure and how all the Heartbreakers are gone. And, I think there's certain eras and genres of music where you definitely see that more and more. And, good to know that like some of these dudes are, keeping healthy and, are there for us for a long time. Not that Tom's not very old. He's like 40 something. But, there are some musicians and some, like punk has kind of changed, I think, that way. Like not so much from like the later era stuff. Like, they're not like they party and they do shit. Like NoFX is like one where it's like, they're partiers and, Fat Mike sings about doing pills and stuff like that. But, and they obviously do it. They walk the walk. It's not like, it's all a show or anything like that. But it is interesting. Like there are certain bands and shit like the Heartbreakers where it's like, they all died pretty damn young. And it's like, but you listen to the music and like what they're singing about and what their lifestyles were and stuff. And like really that live fast, die young kind of thing. And, I think that is slowed down in punk music, which is definitely a good thing. But, a lot of those guys way back then, the reckless abandon. And also, just later on with stuff, we've lost artists from some really shitty, just preventable things and like silly things. And a lot of it too, just sadly, because, they just weren't, didn't have the health insurance or, couldn't afford procedures and stuff like that. And that's always very sad. So, it's just getting back to the topic, very good to see Tom DeLonge taking care of that stuff and that he is still in good health. He to me, just like many others, huge influence, a reason I love all the music I do. You can never be too cool and be like, oh yeah, I only listen to this and that. It's like, nah, man, it's like, most of the music I listened to all started because I liked Blink-182, and then from there I started checking out like the Descendants and Bad Religion and Screeching Weasel and like all the bands that influenced Blink-182. But hopefully all is good with Tom and safe recovery and all that to him. And another piece of news, some more this is more good news, I would say. But Bay Area punk band Get Dead have announced a brand new record, and it is called Dancing with the Curse. It is coming out October 9th on Fat Records. We got some good stuff coming out here in October. And a music video for the first single called Disruption is out now, and you can also go pre-order the record on the Fat Records website. Go grab it on CD or vinyl. And this is going to be the band's first full-length in quite a while. Their last one came out on Fat Records in 2013, and that one was called Bad News. Really, really good release. I actually remember on our very first episode of the radio show, I played Kerouac's Teeth off it, my favorite song off that album. So one of the very first bands that we ever played on the show. But it has been a hot minute since they put out a full length, and they did put out, I believe it was called Bygones, a 7-inch back in like 2015, I would say. So like they haven't released anything in like 5 years, and as far as full lengths go, it's been about 7. So I'm quite excited for this. And new music video is really cool. New song is really good. I love them. They're one of those bands. It's very hard to pinpoint a genre or call them a certain thing. Like you definitely hear some Swinging Utters in there, but there's a lot of other shit too. Swinging Utters is another one though, where it's like they're another band where just so many different influences and different sounds and stuff. But really interesting band. I always love what they do. They keep you very interested in what they're doing on there. And I first saw them on the 2013 Fat Records tour that they did, and I remember afterwards, I'll never forget, one of the dudes hit me up when I was buying their album. One of the dudes in the band hit me up for weed, which I did not have, or else I would have given him. And I remember another member of the band, I think he got like $20 for it, was paid $20 to get punched in the face by this girl. She gave him $20, and she fucking punched him as hard as can be. The first one was not. At first she hit him, was not a very hard hit, and then just fucking whacked him. And he definitely worked for that $20. I know no more context than that. I just watched it happen with the crowd of people watching. But it was hilarious, and I don't think I want to be punched by her. She packed a punch. But that's just what I always remember from that band. Which I think is hilarious. They're a great band, but yeah, like walking up buying the CD and them like, hey man, you got any weed? And then watching another member get punched in the face for $20. It was a good time. It was a very good show and a good time. But with that, on that note, that is going to be the August rundown of the podcast. Thank you so much for hearing me just kind of bullshit here for the last hour and a half. Hopefully you heard some new music there that maybe you missed this month. And, if you missed any of our interviews, go back. And that's the beauty of the podcast. You can go back through the feed and listen to anything you missed. Go follow the show if you will. We are at Power Chord Hour on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. We're on we are on SoundCloud, some of our old interviews, but not very much. You're not going to find much there. But we're on Spotify. And we're also on YouTube. If you're not listening there, you can go there, find all our old interviews and podcast episodes and other goodies on our YouTube page. I put up a playlist on Spotify every week from the stuff I play on the radio show. And that's the other thing. Also, check out the radio show every Friday night now for 2 hours, 10 to midnight Eastern and 7 to 9 Pacific Standard Time. We're on every Friday night on 107.9 WRFA in Jamestown, New York. And you can stream the station on our website, WRFALP. So, check that out every week. Shout out to them for letting me do the show for an extra hour now every week. I'm very excited for that. And hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. And, if there's any guests you want to hear on the show, also let me know your favorite fall records and songs. And if you would like a free Power Chord Hour t-shirt, go rate and review the podcast. Send me a screenshot at our email or on social media, whatever. Just send me a screenshot somewhere, and I'll send you a t-shirt, some guitar picks, and stickers absolutely free as a thank you. And that is going to be it until next week. We'll have another episode for you. But until then, for the Power Chord Hour podcast, I'm Anthony Merchant. Thanks for listening.